Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be joining you at this wonderful announcement. I would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the treaty territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We are honored to live, work on, and enjoy this land. Today is a good day for our community, especially for our small businesses. As we all know, small businesses keep our local economies running, and they have faced some difficulty challenges over the past years, but they are heart of our community. Let me introduce you to Sean, who's our wonderful host here today. Sean is a proud business owner of Knowledge Bookstore, a Black-owned bookstore that sells African Canadian, African American, Caribbean books. When the pandemic hits us, Sean and his team stepped up with the help of a targeted federal funding from the My Main Street federal program. He purchased equipment to design, print, and sell t-shirts to fund two post-secondary scholarship, $2,500 each for two local students. It is a business owner like Sean that inspires us to do even more, to create more opportunities for our small businesses. This is why, as a federal government, we have always been committed to supporting our local businesses, and today's announcement is so important. Not only will it reduce the financial burden on small businesses, but it will also allow them to reinvest those savings back into their businesses. Minister Freeland, we are happy to see you in Brampton, but I remember the last time that you were here in Brampton South, we announced the historic childcare deal with the province of Ontario. And that childcare plan supporting our economy significantly, and so will today's announcement. Since then, we have seen historic levels of participation of women in the workforce. We added 41,000 jobs in April, and our unemployment rate is at 5%, which is close to our record low. But we know there's a lot that we need to do to support our small businesses so they can continue to grow, thrive, and create jobs in Brampton and across Canada. We have been anticipating this announcement since the tabling of Budget 2023. So without further delay, I will run it over to my friend and colleague, Canada's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, the Honorable Chrystia Freeland.
Okay, well, thank you very, very much, Sonia. Thank you very much, Sean, for letting us spend some time in this fantastic bookstore. I'm so happy to be here, and Brampton is a great place to make great announcements. So, good afternoon. Je tiens d'abord à souligner que nous nous réunissons aujourd'hui sur le territoire de la Première Nation des Mississaugas du Credit, visée par un traité, et le territoire traditionnel des Haudenosaunee, des Hurons, et des Wendat. I am so happy to be in Brampton today with my colleague Sonia Sidhu, who is an incredible voice for the people of Brampton, with my colleague and good friend, Minister Mary Ng, our fantastic Minister of International Trade and Small Business. And I am especially glad to be here at a bookstore, at Knowledge Bookstore with Sean and Carolette. This is an invaluable resource and a treasured community space, particularly, but not only, for the Black community here in Brampton. Les Petites Entreprises, and isn't it great, by the way, to have a whole shelf of Toni Morrison behind us, and many other wonderful books. So, les petites entreprises comme cette libraire sont si importantes pour nos économies locales et nos communautés. Pour les petites entreprises comme celle-ci, chaque dollar compte pour faire croître leur commerce, payer leurs employés et contribuer, comme Sean fait chaque jour, à leur communauté. Right now, small businesses in Canada face steep credit card interchange fees. When we buy something with our credit cards, as I am looking forward to do in a minute, small businesses pay a fee on that transaction. And the largest component is the interchange fee paid to the credit card company. Canadians pay some of the highest interchange fees in the world, and that lowers the profit margins for small businesses and drives up prices for Canadians. With more Canadians using credit cards than cash, a trend that we have seen especially marked since the pandemic, those fees can really add up for a small business like this one. And that's why I am so happy to be able to announce today that our government is delivering on our commitment to lower credit card transaction fees for small businesses. We have reached agreements with Visa and Mastercard, which will mean 90% of credit card accepting businesses are going to see lower fees starting next year. In fact, eligible small businesses like Knowledge Bookstore will see their fees reduced by up to 27%. Specifically, businesses with annual Visa sales below $300,000 will qualify for lower interchange fees from Visa, and those with annual Mastercard sales below $175,000 will qualify for lower fees from Mastercard. So let me give you an example. If you own a small store with $300,000 in annual credit card sales, the agreements we are announcing today mean you could save $1,080 to your bottom line. For a small business, that's money that you can use in so many ways: to advertise, to buy some more books, to buy new equipment, or just to give yourself a little extra breathing room. Over the next 5 years, these agreements will save eligible Canadian small businesses about $1 billion. And we're doing this while protecting and preserving the rewards points that Canadians receive from their credit cards. Today's announcement is great news for small businesses across Canada, for Sean and Carolette here at Knowledge Bookstore in Brampton, and for people like them from coast to coast to coast. And so, before concluding, I'd just like to thank the many, many people who worked really hard to secure these new agreements. In particular, I'd like to thank Dan Kelly, the President and CEO of the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses. Dan is with us today, and we worked very closely with him to get this deal done. Thanks a lot, Dan. Your hard work and advocacy really make a difference for small businesses across the country, and I really appreciate the work that we've been able to do together with you. So today is a great day for Canada. It's a great day for the small businesses that so many of us depend on, and I am very glad to be here with Sean, Carolette, and some other local Brampton businesses to celebrate. So thanks a lot, and I think back to Sonia.
Thank you, Minister. What a great news for our small businesses. Let's give a big round of applause. We're really happy to see you in Brampton again very soon. So thank you, Minister. I really want to thank you from all business community where we are here today. Friends, as we know, small business make up 98% of all businesses in Canada and employ more than 10 million Canadians. They play a critical role in our economy, which is why I'm pleased to introduce someone who works very hard to support them, my colleague, Minister of International Trade, Export Promotion, Small Businesses, and Economic Development, the Honorable Mary Ng.
You hear that a lot from us. We say yay. Thank you so much, Sonia, and thank you so much, Chrystia and Dan. It's terrific to join you both here at this wonderful bookstore, and I don't know, I think we're gonna be able to use our credit card and take advantage of that reduction pretty soon. But thank you so much for having us here today. It is an exciting day for businesses. And just to, echo what the Deputy Prime Minister said about today's announcement, it really is about helping those small businesses, just like this one and across Canada, to get some of that help that is needed to help make their businesses just a little bit more profitable, a little bit more affordable for them. And as Sonia says, small businesses really are the heart of communities all across the country. It's 98% of all businesses in Canada. They employ about 3/4 of Canada's private sector workforce. And the work that they do and the people that they employ is just so important to our communities. For someone who grew up in a small business, not a bookstore, but a restaurant, this really does resonate. And it certainly resonates to so many of the small businesses that I've talked to here across Canada, and of course to Dan and his members. And if I think back through the pandemic and just how resilient you have all been, it really is a journey that we have been on together just to help support Canada's small businesses in their work. We had a little roundtable just before making this announcement with Knowledge Books here, who are our wonderful hosts, but also catering by Gregory's, who is with us, and also Tria Cafe and Bakery. These are small business owners who gave us just tremendous feedback about their work as businesses here in the Greater Toronto Area, and whether it was throughout the pandemic, where we listened intently on the needs of businesses so that we could provide the kinds of supports, whether it was to help them with the working capital through the small business loans, or just helping them deal with expenses like rent, or keeping their employees connected to them as employers so that we experience one of the most robust recoveries in recovering all of the jobs and then some since the pandemic. So to the small businesses who are with us today, but also across the country, just a heartfelt thank you for your resilience and for the tremendous work that you have done. And today, this announcement is really about supporting our businesses across the country. You heard the Deputy Prime Minister talk about the increased use of credit cards. We saw that during the pandemic. I think it's well known, and in our neighborhoods and among our families, curbside pickup is now a new term. I mean, it is curbside pickup, and with the curbside pickup, it really means that many consumers, many customers were using way more credit cards, and that trend has continued. So today's announcement that really is going to help businesses, small businesses, those of the smallest of businesses, get the relief from credit card interchange fees is really quite significant. And whether it is whether it is bookstore like this, or the restaurants or the catering companies that were here, and those across the country, we really do hope that this will help you and help you be more competitive. One of the things that we also rolled out as part of the work to help businesses get more productive is the Canada Digital Adoption Program, to help businesses like this one get more digital. And again, more digital just means more customers using credit cards. So these credit card fees and the reductions are really going to help. So with that, I'm not going to say very much more other than to say thank you again to Knowledge Books who are here, and to the businesses that have joined us for that for the roundtable a little earlier. But I'll leave it with this final note: when small businesses in our country succeed, our communities succeed, our people succeed, our families succeed. So bravo, thank you so much, and I look forward to continuing our work together.
Thank you, Minister. I know it is important work, and then we do for our communities, and these communities inspire us to do even more. Next, I want to introduce Dan Kelly, President and the CEO of the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses. A few minutes ago, I shared the story of Sean from my riding of Brampton South. Dan and his team at CFIB work with people like Sean every day, and it is them who inspire him to do even more. I would like to ask Dan to say a few words. Dan.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Sonia, and ministers, Deputy Prime Minister. It's good to be with you. Look, businesses like this one have been put through the ringer over the past 3 years, and I was just speaking to some of our members, small business owners here in this part of Toronto, this part of Ontario, here in Brampton, and I gotta say, with the number of days that businesses were closed down altogether or facing restrictions, it is a testament to the stick-to-itiveness of business owners that they've made it this far. I just want to thank all the entrepreneurs that have helped Canada so much over the course of the past few years, because it has certainly not been easy. I also want to say thank you to the Government of Canada, to the ministers that are represented here, for their help in helping so many small firms. In fact, at the roundtable this morning, some of our small business members said that without some of the support programs that were in place, they're not sure that they would have made it through the last couple of challenging years. And that's very much true. Our data shows that at CFIB. But as we come out of the pandemic, there are so many new challenges that are facing. You mentioned a second ago, ministers, the increased use of credit cards during the pandemic. Remember those days at the beginning, we thought we were going to catch COVID by using by passing a $20 bill back and forth. Consumers, as a result, flocked to using credit cards in greater numbers than ever before, more businesses accepting them on a greater volume of their sales. And as a result, these fees have put huge pressure on the bottom lines of businesses as they try to get towards the road to recovery. So any relief on any major expense that a business has is enormously helpful to businesses, to small businesses at a critical time, and we're grateful to see the progress that has been made today. These are not small reductions. For small businesses, this will be a meaningful reduction in the fees that they pay. And one of the things that I do want to highlight, Minister, and you mentioned a second ago, the increasing need for businesses to go digital. One of the roadblocks to businesses going digital is that those fees for accepting credit cards are even higher than for in-store sales. And this agreement includes a 10 basis point reduction for businesses making e-commerce sales. And that, I believe, will be quite stimulative and helpful to businesses in their journey on that front. So we're very pleased to see this agreement. We've worked really hard together. There have been lots of phone calls back and forth. And I'm just really pleased on behalf of the 97,000 members of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business and the 1.1 million small businesses with paid staff across Canada to see the progress that has been made today. Also, a huge thank you to Sean, to you and Carolette for hosting us at your beautiful bookstore today. My wife, originally from Trinidad, would be very jealous that I get to be here today to see all the great things you have in store. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dan. We'll open up the floor to questions from the media. The press conference will be managed by Adrian, Press Secretary from the Office of Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Adrian, over to you.
So we'll go down to questions from media. One question, one follow-up.
This is Cameron posing as Adrian.
Indeed. So one question, one follow-up. If you could just state your name and your outlet.
Good afternoon, Deputy Prime Minister Simon Dingley from CBC National News. Thank you for the announcement about the credit card announcement. Just like to ask you a couple of other questions. Regarding the Stellantis plant in Windsor, are you asking Ontario to help with capital costs, or are you helping to match the tax incentives the U.S. is offering under the IRA?
Okay, well, thanks for being here. Thanks for your question. When it comes to Stellantis, I would just like to start by saying that I believe there has been no federal government in Canadian history that has believed as much in the auto sector and invested as much in the auto sector as our government. You saw that in the NAFTA negotiations, where the car sector was right in the heart of what we were fighting for and what we accomplished. You saw that with the EV incentives, where Mary and the Prime Minister and I fought really, really hard to get Canada carved into the US EV incentives, another essential measure for the car sector here in Canada, here in Ontario. And you're seeing that now as our government puts the shoulder to the wheel and makes significant investments in EV production in Canada. So we really believe in it. We're going to continue believing in the car sector in Ontario. We're going to get it done. And, you know, central for us, you know, as Mary and Sonia and Dan have been talking about our support for small businesses, it's all about people. It's all about the people who work here. With the car sector, it's exactly the same thing. And in our green industrial policy that we announced in the budget, for the first time in Canadian history, you have labor requirements embedded in those incentives. Now, on Stellantis specifically, our government's conviction, our government's insistence is that it's going to be really important for everyone to pay their fair share. It's important for the company to pay its fair share, and it's important for the province of Ontario to pay its fair share. I was at the Finance Committee in Ottawa on Tuesday, and I had very legitimate questions from an MP who represents a different province. And his question to me was, you know, can you guarantee to me, Minister, that these investments that the federal government is making in the green, clean industrial economy will be shared evenly across the country? I'm an MP for Ontario, and I'm very proud to be an MP for Ontario. But I'm Finance Minister for Canada, and it is really important for us that these major investments, $120 billion industrial plan we now have, it has to be shared evenly across the country. One way that we ensure that happens is when there is a major investment in a specific province is to have a conversation with the province to ensure that the province is doing its fair share. And that is exactly what we're doing with Stellantis. And I just want to conclude by saying I am confident that this is going to happen. We're going to get this done. There is goodwill on all sides.
Madame la ministre, puis-je avoir un commentaire en français sur le situation avec Stellantis, s'il vous plaît?
Avec du plaisir. Alors, on est en train de travailler avec la province de l'Ontario, avec Stellantis, et nous sommes très optimistes. Je suis confiante qu'en bout de ligne, on aura une excellente entente pour les travailleurs, pour les Ontariennes, pour les Canadiennes. La position de notre gouvernement, c'est que chaque partie doit faire sa juste part. La province doit contribuer sa juste part et aussi Stellantis doit contribuer sa juste part. Et je pense que c'est correct, c'est normal. Une des raisons que cette position équilibrée est si importante pour nous, c'est que nous comprenons l'importance de la justice régionale. Et quand nous sommes absolument convaincus que c'est important de faire des grands investissements dans la capacité industrielle du Canada, dans l'économie industrielle propre. Mais quand on fait un grand investissement dans une province en particulier, pour avoir la justice régionale, c'est correct, c'est normal de prendre la position que la province doit aussi faire sa juste part.
Second question, Deputy Prime Minister. Your government's clean fuel standard will increase the cost of fuel, and this will impact low-income households. How does the government plan to support families that will be impacted by this?
So let me just start by making a connection between the clean fuel standard and the industrial investments we've just been talking about. One of the things that makes Canada an attractive investment destination is our climate action. Increasingly, companies want to make investments in countries that have a strong climate agenda. And they want to do that because that is what their shareholders are demanding. That's also what their customers are demanding. So there is just a very strong business case, setting aside, the real concerns Canadians have about our planet. And even as we're speaking, wildfires are raging across Alberta. But even setting aside those concerns, purely from a business and investment standpoint, Canada needs to take strong climate action. We have been doing that. We will continue to do that. And I see, one proof point for the value, the importance of our climate plan is the inward investment, which is coming in. Now, I very much agree with, your central point that even as we take climate action, we have to be very, very thoughtful of the impact on Canadians, particularly the most vulnerable. That's why one of the reasons that our price on pollution has been designed so that actually the most vulnerable get a real benefit and actually net come out ahead. That's good program design because we really believe we always need to be thinking about and supporting the most vulnerable. We're going to continue to do that with all of our programs.
La même question pour la famille pauvre dans le Canada.
Alors, nous comprenons que une politique économique verte est importante pour deux raisons. Évidemment, c'est important parce que c'est essentiel pour la planète, c'est essentiel pour nos enfants et nos petits-enfants, pour les générations prochaines. Mais aujourd'hui, c'est aussi essentiel du côté économique, du côté des investissements de l'étranger, parce que le monde entier, l'Union européenne, les États-Unis, les grandes compagnies internationales ont décidé que le climat, c'est une priorité. Pour eux, avoir des produits propres, investir dans une économie qui a fait le choix de créer une économie propre, c'est absolument essentiel. Alors, du côté d'attirer les investissements, et je suis avec le ministre du Commerce, c'est une de ses priorités, attirer des investissements. C'est absolument essentiel pour nous d'avoir un plan concret, réel pour le climat. Concernant les moins nantis, c'est toujours une priorité pour notre gouvernement. On le voit avec notre rebais pour l'épicerie qui arrivera dans les poches des Canadiens le 5 juillet. On le voit avec notre prix sur la pollution qui est créé dans une manière qui donne plus de l'argent aux moins nantis. On continuera de cibler les moins nantis dans tous nos programmes.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. I have two questions on behalf of a rival network that doesn't have a reporter here.
Now that's called media team spirit. That's very Canadian. I like that.
I used to work for them, so many years.
Okay.
Canadians are racking up debt and beginning to renew mortgages at a much higher interest rate. Is the piecemeal offering of a few $100s here and there to the lowest income Canadians really the solution to prevent insolvencies and bankruptcies?
Look, I'd like to respond to that with a conversation that we had in our discussion with the great Brampton small businesses a little bit earlier today. Here's the reality. Right now, Canada is still living through the final stage of what you might want to call COVID economics. First, we had the lockdown. These guys, people here can tell you what the lockdown was like. Our government provided major support. I am glad that we did. I do not regret that for 1 minute. Then we had the reopening. We knew how stressful in its own way that was. And part of what we experienced as a result of the reopening, exacerbated by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, exacerbated by the fact that the rest of the world was reopening at the same time, is major supply chain stresses and inflation. We are now in the third sort of act of the COVID economy, and that is the Bank of Canada raising rates to bring inflation down. I think all of us recognize that these higher rates are posing real challenges to Canadian families. They're posing real challenges to Canadian small businesses. And one of the reasons that I was glad to have a conversation here today is to understand directly from the people who, are keeping books on our shelves or food in our cafes, what it's like operating in this environment where interest rates are high. But you know what else I heard? High inflation is a challenge too. And we need to get that inflation down. Now, the good news is inflation is coming down. It reached a peak of more than 8% last June. It was 4.4% last month. I know that the high interest rates that are getting us there are causing real challenges to Canadians. And our government is providing targeted, focused support to the most vulnerable. The grocery rebate, that's going to provide nearly $500 for a family of 4. That's going to arrive on July 5th. But I also have to be honest with you and with Canadians. Our government cannot compensate every single person in Canada for the additional strain caused by high inflation and caused by high interest rates. And we can't do that for 2 reasons. One is the resources of our government are not infinite, and it's not my money, it's the money of everybody here, it's the money of Canadians. But the other reason that we can't even aim to do that is if our government were to try, imagine that scenario, then we would never get inflation under control. And we are very committed to, yes, targeted support for people who need it the most, but not pouring fuel on the flames of inflation, because inflation is coming down. I do not want to get in the way of that, and I'm not going to.
You mentioned inflation's coming down, but household debt is now the highest of any G7 country. What does that say about Canada's economic health?
Well, I actually am extremely bullish on Canada. And that was something that we also all talked about. And in fact, one of the small business owners who was here, a gentleman who's had the experience of living in, I think it was 6 or 7 countries other than Canada, said something in our conversation that I really believe, which is Canada is the best country in the world. And we are the country that has the strongest economic fundamentals. I absolutely agree that high inflation is a challenge. And I absolutely agree that the high interest rates, which the Bank of Canada has put in place to fight inflation, are a challenge too. But you know what is the best way for any Canadian to deal with a challenging economic environment? It's by having a job or by having a business. And our government has been focused since COVID first hit on keeping people in their jobs and on keeping businesses afloat. And, Dan was very right to thank Canadian entrepreneurs for their resilience, for getting through remarkably challenging times. So thanks, Sean. Really remarkable. And our government has been there to provide support, and it is working. Canada now has 900,000 more jobs than we did before COVID. That is a huge jobs recovery, and it's a stronger jobs recovery than you've seen in the United States. Our economy grew by 3.4% last year and 2.5% in the first quarter. So for sure, things are challenging. We are not out of the woods yet when it comes to the challenges that COVID and the COVID recession imposed on Canada and Canadians. But I think as Canadians, we should also take comfort and maybe a little bit of pride in the fact that compared to any other country around the world, we're doing a pretty good job and we're going to get through it.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister.
Thanks. Okay.
Hi, Chris Hanna, Globe and Mail. So my first question is on today's announcement. I wanted to ask about the size threshold for the small businesses, because I think there's a lot of kind of high volume, low margin businesses like independent grocery stores and convenience stores that will probably not meet this, or their sales are too high to be captured by this. So I was wondering if you could sort of explain how you arrived at the threshold and if it's open to review or change in the future.
So This was an extremely challenging deal to reach. And when Dan said we had a lot of phone calls between us, he is not exaggerating. Credit card fees are a very complicated Rubik's Cube in Canada. There are many, many different businesses with different interests, and Canadians have different interests too. On the one hand, I think we want prices to be as low as possible. I think we all love the small businesses that are at the heart of our local communities. I think a lot of Canadians really love their reward points too. And so coming up with a compromise that lowered fees for the greatest number of small businesses, the ones who need it the most, while ensuring that the Canadians who love their reward points can still have them. That was our objective, and I feel really happy that we've achieved it. As Dan said, as I said in my remarks, more than 90% of credit card accepting businesses are going to benefit from this reduction. And Dan pointed out another really important element of our agreement, which is that there's also a reduction in the digital space. And we know, one of the things that we discussed with the businesses here is small businesses are going digital too, and we want to do everything we can to facilitate that.
All right. And on my second question, it's a different topic, switching gears to CEBA.
I'm going to let Mary take the mic for that one in the first instance. I'm happy to chip in, although she's pretty good at handling herself. But go ahead, Mary.
Okay. So on CEBA, specifically, I wanted to ask about the outsourcing to Accenture, because I have been trouble getting. What you were going to say? Sorry. Yeah. I've been having trouble getting answers from the department about that, so I figured I would ask you directly. So I wondered if you could just help me understand kind of how that contract was awarded, whether it was at the minister level, whether you were involved in that decision to award that contract, that $200 million contract, whether it was a competitive decision, and why nothing about it was disclosed publicly.
Well, let me start with the CEBA loan and the conversations that we've been having, whether it's with Dan and his members or those that were here. Almost 1 million businesses got access to that loan. I remember, as the Deputy Prime Minister said right at the very beginning, the first phase, which was just lockdown. And you think about a business like this one, where immediately you were locked down, and therefore your customers weren't coming in the door. This was before we could add clicks to the bricks, but they were locked down, and that loan was just absolutely essential. I want to thank the tremendous people who in government that was able to put and stand up the CEBA loan so quickly. But it was standing up that loan so quickly with the integrity that was needed in ensuring that that loan was stood up, and that it could be dispersed almost instantaneously to businesses. And in the course of the pandemic, we heard that the $40,000 wasn't quite enough, and let's provide some additional, which we did. Thank you very much, Minister of Finance. But that work was just so extremely important to be done. And I would also say that it was never done before. So collaborating with Canadian financial institutions, EDC and BDC, who were the Crown corporations who were so instrumental in doing this, and just as government, the government organizations, or in this case, Crown corporations do, making sure that we brought in the right amount of help to ensure that both from a quality standpoint and from an efficiency standpoint and from a speed standpoint, that the loans got out was essentially the work that was done.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Freeland?
I said Mary could handle herself. That wasn't the question I anticipated, but she is pretty good at handling herself. So.
All right, that concludes today's press conference. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, yeah, thank you very, very much for coming, and thanks again, Sean and Carolette, for hosting us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.